If you rented a movie from Blockbuster in 2004, you'd probably pay about $4 for a new release. A few cents of that went towards the actual plastic VHS tape or DVD you held in your hands. The rest went towards everything else. And as you undoubtedly know, in Blockbuster's case, everything else was a tremendous amount. Some portion of that $4 went towards paying for this, one of the company's 9,000 stores. And these stores were so far from what came before. They weren't small mom and pop operations. They weren't regional chains with a dozen locations. They were everywhere. In strip malls, in downtown shopping districts, in suburban neighborhoods across America and beyond. For one of the world's most recognizable brands, it was a remarkably massive physical footprint. Each store took up thousands of square feet, stocked thousands of titles, and employed dozens of workers. They had bright blue and yellow signage, standardized layouts, and that distinct smell of popcorn and plastic cases. There was clear strategic logic behind this expansion. Blockbuster's founder, David Cook, saw opportunity. He saw that video rental was fragmented and inefficient, and he wanted to dominate it. The company's massive scale may seem inevitable in retrospect, but less so when considering how quickly it all collapsed. After all, at its core, Blockbuster was a pretty simple company. It rented movies and video games to customers who'd return them a few days later. They charged late fees when people didn't return on time. They sold popcorn and candy at the counter. That was pretty much it. That was their entire business model. Compare this to their eventual destroyer, Netflix, which started with a similarly simple model of mailing DVDs, but evolved into something that would produce original content, license libraries, develop recommendation algorithms, and fundamentally restructure how entertainment worked. The rough estimate is that Netflix now offers around 15,000 titles at any given time across its global markets. Adding to their initial simplicity, Blockbuster didn't even make the movies they rented. They bought them from studios, often paying premium prices for new releases. In their early days, Blockbuster hardly had the infrastructure to negotiate favorable terms, but as part of the growing video rental industry, founder Cook had connections and convinced studios to work with revenue-sharing deals. Today, that entire arrangement has vanished. But even then, most of the world's video rentals went through Blockbuster's standardized system, and all of it relied on people physically coming to stores. Their largest concentration of stores was here in major American cities. Each was stocked with inventory from centralized distribution centers who contracted to manage Blockbuster's supply chain, not used for any other retailer. While the direct access to residential neighborhoods allowed for easy customer traffic, a similar setup was replicated in thousands of locations across the country and eventually internationally. Until the late 1990s, every single movie rental transaction happened in a physical store until companies started experimenting with alternatives. So the setup began to face competition. Netflix launched in 1997. Redbox started testing kiosks. Keeping a business model dependent on physical stores and late fee revenue going just wasn't that sustainable, which explains why the vast majority of Blockbuster's efforts in its final years did not deal with improving the rental experience. Rather, they focused on what had always driven their success, getting you into stores. From its beginning, Blockbuster was more a real estate and inventory management company than an entertainment company. Prior to founding it, David Cook worked in the oil and gas software industry, developing database management systems. This gave him insight into how data could optimize retail operations. At the time, the early 1980s, video rental stores were already widespread across America despite being highly disorganized and inefficient. On one of Cook's observations, as the story goes, he was looking at the video rental industry and saw that most stores were small, poorly stocked, and used inefficient paper-based systems. Inside his analysis, he found an opportunity to apply database technology and retail management principles to create something better. Details get a bit fuzzy and conflicting on what exactly happened next, but what we know for sure is that Cook saw potential. He wanted to build something bigger. And these factors, combined with his technical background, brought him to open the first Blockbuster video in Dallas, Texas, in 1985. Sensing opportunity, Cook invested heavily in computer systems that could track inventory, manage rentals, and analyze customer preferences in ways the competition simply couldn't. He created a store experience that was brighter, cleaner, and more family-friendly than existing rental shops. The first store stocked over 8,000 VHS tapes, far more than typical rental stores at the time. It was not about being cheap, it was about being better. Cook spent the next few years perfecting this model. He wanted stores that felt less like sketchy back alley shops and more like legitimate retail destinations. So he added wide aisles, bright lighting, introduced a family-friendly selection policy, and expanded into multiple locations rapidly. Come 1987, after a period of rapid growth and franchising, Blockbuster was operating dozens of stores. It was positioned as the premium option, offering selection and convenience that mom and pop stores couldn't match. Cook went around and convinced franchisees one by one to invest. The model's success intrigued investors, and the company would push aggressive expansion to work across entire metropolitan areas. Cook also marketed it in the places and contexts he thought video rental would be most successful. He'd locate stores in high-traffic shopping centers, in suburban areas with growing populations, anywhere where families would want convenient access to entertainment. All his efforts were compounded by strong word of mouth spread throughout American communities. The new stores were impressive, and they made for a good topic of conversation. In its first few years of operations, Blockbuster expanded to hundreds of locations. Then it followed that up with thousands more and quickly reached market dominance, the position every retail entrepreneur dreams of. But after achieving this dominance, the company only saw more growth ahead. Blockbuster had to keep expanding in leadership's mind, and they were absolutely allowed to. They were successfully gaining market share in every viable market, as consumers were eager for a better rental experience, fueling legitimate belief that aggressive expansion could be sustained indefinitely. International markets opened up, and the company did expand there, into the UK, into Australia, into markets across the globe. But then Blockbuster just simply got incredibly unlucky with timing. On September 23, 1997, Netflix launched its DVD rental by mail service. Now, customers could browse and order movies from home, meaning the entire value proposition of physical stores started to erode. As part of this, every advantage Blockbuster had built around location convenience and inventory management was suddenly less relevant. The challenges did slow Netflix's impact initially, but as they were progressively sorted out, streaming video became viable around 2007. But all in all, Blockbuster's dominance eroded massively in a short period of time following the late 2000s technology shift. Now they just needed to convince people to keep coming to stores. Going location by location wouldn't work anymore. Leadership had to find a way to compete with convenience, but they had actually already been offered the answer. It was early 2000. Netflix was struggling with profitability and looking for a buyer. Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings flew to Dallas to meet with Blockbuster leadership and pitched a partnership. Hastings offered to sell Netflix for $50 million or alternatively work out a partnership where Netflix would handle Blockbuster's online presence. And even though this was a borderline offensively small sum for a company of Blockbuster's size, leadership didn't see the value, so they declined. With this decision, they sealed the fate of their 9,000 stores. This choice produced outcomes like bankruptcy. These outcomes were how Blockbuster lost its position in the world. The message was clear: this is a changing industry. The job of leaders is to adapt to whatever is coming, and they failed to see that the future was in convenience and technology. Every time a streaming service made renting easier, the subconscious of everyone who used it started to associate physical rental stores with inconvenience. When those people wanted entertainment, they would remember that Netflix was what made accessing movies effortless. Then they'd subscribe, Netflix would earn revenue, and they'd use it to do this all again. Still, at a somewhat moderate scale initially, Netflix couldn't afford to license the very best and newest content. So they started with older catalog titles and focused on having the biggest impact in serving underserved niches, particularly those involving hard-to-find films, international cinema, and highly specific genres. Importantly, Netflix almost always focused on user experience rather than store locations, revenue sharing, or theatrical windows. They focused on making the best experience in whatever they did. Features like personalized recommendations. The algorithm that learned what you liked and suggested more of it, having refined this through years of data collection and machine learning development. Or the autoplay feature, which kept content flowing without requiring user input, reducing friction even further. And even in content licensing, the company developed strategies to compound their dollars' effects by finding undervalued libraries that attracted disproportionate attention. Entire television series back catalogs, for example, were content that wasn't at the top of licensing costs in any one negotiation, but earned high subscriber retention based on the fact that binge watching was near the top in both engagement hours and word-of-mouth marketing, an almost unheard-of combination for older content. Shows still crossed cultural relevance thresholds and won devoted fan bases. And whenever content was available, it was presented with the Netflix interface and branding. In order to attract top-tier content, Netflix not only offered competitive licensing fees, but they also built a network of data scientists, content analysts, engineers, and product designers housed in top-notch offices in Los Gatos and Los Angeles, or at well-funded production partnerships in whatever locations were relevant for a given project. The degree of investment in technology and content was often far above what was typical in the traditional entertainment industry they were disrupting. But as technology improved through time, Netflix had the ability to compound its advantage through compounding its investment in the infrastructure needed for streaming. They started to not only license content, but transform the entire industry. You see, traditional entertainment had established systems. Theatrical windows for movies, weekly episode releases for TV, regional distribution deals. These conventions set standards and maintained high-level control over how content reached audiences in their respective markets. Digital streaming lacked these constraints, meaning distribution was flexible with different approaches working in different, sometimes revolutionary ways, leading to rapid innovation and new opportunities at the top end of entertainment. Netflix would enter these spaces and produce the best-funded originals with the biggest budgets, immediately attracting top-level talent, becoming the platform creators wanted to work with, and incentivizing those across the industry to make their production approach compatible with the way Netflix did things, naturally standardizing around streaming. In original series, they produced shows like House of Cards, the first major streaming original drama. In film production, the company invested in movies like Roma, once again becoming a legitimate awards contender. The same goes for documentary series with Making a Murderer. The biggest creators, the most media, the most attention. In comedy specials and reality shows and animation and more, it's the same. Netflix's platform played a massive central role. This means that in many of the world's most talked about entertainment properties, the best creators took their biggest creative risks producing the most compelling content in front of the Netflix logo. People consuming entertainment at their highest engagement while Netflix was seared into your brain. Eventually, the streaming company had accumulated enough subscribers to have a big impact on the entire industry, and the consequences became obvious. Traditional media had to respond. It was time for everyone to enter streaming. Conveniently for them, they owned content libraries, but inconveniently, they were losing the licensing revenue that Netflix had been paying. They were facing a dilemma, and corporate had to decide if vertical integration was worth it. Being good at making content wasn't exactly the same as being good at technology platforms. So many companies were hesitant to fully commit at first. But the industry shifted anyway. Disney pulled content from Netflix, launched Disney Plus, and considering how valuable their library was, the service grew rapidly, including franchises like Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and classic animation, along with new originals. Media companies then invested heavily, hired experienced streaming executives and engineers, and it worked to varying degrees. By the early 2020s, every major entertainment company had launched a streaming service, fragmenting the market and creating the very situation that cable television had created decades before. There are various levels of success, some thriving, others struggling with the same challenges Blockbuster had faced, adapting business models to new realities. While streaming might not have the same profit margins as traditional media in many cases, its unavoidable future still makes it the focus of virtually every entertainment company's strategy, driving a simply massive amount of investment towards building platforms, especially when legacy revenue streams are declining. Netflix truly flipped the script on how entertainment distribution works. Rather than relying on physical infrastructure and inventory management, they built a technology platform that could deliver content instantly. They manufactured a global, stunningly efficient delivery system to provide entertainment the world would want to consume, and they managed to do so while being a legitimate innovator. Netflix, the overall company, has had mixed impact on the world. It's hard to find complete merit in the attention economy and content overload. But if you set the cultural fragmentation concerns aside, there are many corners of the entertainment world where their influence has meaningfully improved how stories reach audiences. For that, there are countless talented creators who feel genuine appreciation towards the company. Their craft is better because of this streaming company. This means that plenty of people, both creators and viewers, don't think of Netflix as a DVD rental company. They think of them as the future. This transformation has, for over a decade, now cemented streaming's position of market dominance. They are the entertainment distribution model. Everyone else is just those who attempt to adapt.